In January 2012, while you were posting photos of your lunch and liking your cousin's engagement announcement, Facebook was running an experiment on you. Not a software test, not a bug fix, a psychological experiment designed to manipulate your emotions without your knowledge or consent.
Wait, hold up.
And here's the thing that should terrify you. It worked. They proved they could make you sadder. They proved they could make you happier. And they did it to nearly 700,000 people in a single week.
700,000 people in 1 week?
That was just the beginning. What I'm about to tell you spans over a decade of experiments involving billions of users. We're talking about voting manipulation, psychological profiling, addiction engineering, and internal research that Facebook buried because it proved their platform was destroying teenage girls' mental health.
And people just don't know about this?
Oh, they know pieces. A headline here, a congressional hearing there, but nobody's connected all of it. Nobody's shown you the full picture of how one company turned 3 billion humans into lab rats. Until now.
All right, before we dive into this rabbit hole, let's set the stage. When we say Meta, we're talking about the company formerly known as Facebook, right?
Exactly. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, all under the Meta umbrella. And just to put the scale in perspective, as of today, Meta platforms have roughly 3.9 billion monthly active users. That's half of everyone on Earth with internet access.
Half the planet? That's insane.
And here's what makes this different from any other company in history. Meta doesn't just sell you products. They don't just show you ads. They study you. They experiment on you. They've built the largest behavioral laboratory in human history. And you volunteered to be a subject the moment you clicked "I agree" on those terms of service.
Terms of service that nobody reads.
Terms of service that are literally designed not to be read. The average Facebook terms of service would take 30 minutes to read at normal speed. They know you're not reading it. That's the point.
So what are we covering today? Because I've heard bits and pieces about Facebook controversies, but you're making this sound way more systematic than I thought.
We're going to break down 5 major experiments and revelations. First, the 2012 emotional contagion study, where Facebook literally tried to control how you feel. Second, the 2010 voting experiment, where they proved they could influence real-world elections. Third, Cambridge Analytica, the 87 million user data heist that may have changed the course of American politics. Fourth, the Instagram teen mental health research that Facebook buried for years. And finally, how their algorithms are engineered like slot machines to create addiction.
That's a lot of crimes.
Well, here's the twisted part. Most of it isn't technically illegal. They wrote the rules. They made you agree to the rules. And then they exploited those rules to turn your psychology into their playground.
I'm already uncomfortable. Let's do this.
January 11th through 18th, 2012. 1 week. Facebook's core data science team, led by a researcher named Adam Kramer, decides to run what they called an emotional contagion study.
Emotional contagion. That sounds like a disease.
That's actually the perfect way to think about it. The theory is simple. Emotions spread between people like viruses. If you're around happy people, you tend to feel happier. If you're around depressed people, you might start feeling down too. Scientists had proven this works in face-to-face interactions. Facebook wanted to know, does it work through screens?
So they wanted to see if sad posts make you sad?
Exactly. But they didn't ask if you wanted to participate. They didn't tell you the experiment was happening. They just did it. Here's how it worked. They took 689,003 English-speaking Facebook users and split them into groups. For one group, Facebook's algorithm filtered their newsfeed to show fewer positive posts from friends and family. For another group, they filtered out negative posts.
Wait, so they deliberately showed some people more depressing content?
Yes. For an entire week, nearly 700,000 people were shown a distorted version of reality specifically designed to manipulate their emotional state. Your friend posts about their amazing vacation? Hidden. Your aunt shares good news about her health? Suppressed. Instead, you see more complaints, more sadness, more negativity.
That's psychotic. What happened?
It worked. Perfectly. Users who saw fewer positive posts became more negative themselves. They started posting more negative content, using more negative words. Users who saw fewer negative posts became more positive. Facebook had proved with scientific certainty that they could control how you feel by controlling what you see.
And how many people knew this was happening?
0. Not a single one of the 689,003 subjects was informed, not before, not during, not after. Facebook analyzed over 3 million posts containing more than 122 million words. They tracked the emotional content of everything those users wrote, and nobody had a clue.
How is that legal?
Because of 4 words buried in Facebook's data use policy: research and service improvement. When you signed up for Facebook, you agreed to let them use your data for research. That's it. That's their legal shield. You clicked a button, probably in 2009, and according to Facebook, that means you consented to psychological experimentation in 2012.
But that's not informed consent. That's not how research on humans is supposed to work.
You're absolutely right. And that's where this gets really ugly. See, the study wasn't just run by Facebook. It was a collaboration with researchers from Cornell University. Academic research on human subjects in the United States is supposed to go through an institutional review board, an ethics committee that makes sure experiments don't harm people. Cornell's IRB apparently decided they didn't need to review this study because Facebook was collecting the data.
So Cornell gets to say not our problem, and Facebook gets to say they agreed to terms of service?
Beautiful loophole, isn't it? The American Psychological Association has clear guidelines. If you deceive participants in a study, you have to tell them about the deception as soon as possible afterward. Facebook never told anyone. The only reason we know about this experiment at all is because they published it in a scientific journal in 2014, 2 years after they did it.
They bragged about it?
They published it in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They were proud. The paper's conclusion stated, and I'm paraphrasing here, that emotions expressed by others on Facebook influence our own emotions, constituting experimental evidence for massive-scale emotional contagion via social networks.
Massive-scale emotional contagion. They really called it that.
Direct quote. And when the study went public and people rightfully freaked out, the editor of the journal published what they called an editorial expression of concern, basically admitting that questions had been raised about informed consent, but stopping short of actually retracting the paper.
What did Facebook say when this blew up?
Adam Kramer, the lead researcher, posted an apology on Facebook, of course, saying, quote, "The reason we did this research is because we care about the emotional impact of Facebook and the people that use our product."
We care about your emotions so much that we manipulated them without telling you.
The irony is thick enough to choke on. And here's what really gets me. Kramer's apology said the results were insignificant and not worth the anxiety they caused, but that's not what the paper said. The paper said they found statistically significant effects. They published it because it proved their hypothesis.
So he's apologizing by lying about the results of the experiment he's apologizing for.
Welcome to Meta's public relations strategy. But here's the part that should keep you up at night. This is the experiment they told us about. This is the one they were proud enough to publish. What experiments have they run that they didn't publish?
I don't like where this is going.
In their paper, Facebook mentioned that the experiment was consistent with Facebook's data use policy, to which all users agree prior to creating an account. They're not saying this was a one-time thing. They're establishing a precedent. They're saying, we can do this whenever we want, to whoever we want, and we don't have to tell you.
And people just kept using Facebook?
Daily active users actually increased after the scandal broke. We got mad for about a week, then went back to scrolling. That's the real emotional contagion, Emotional outrage fatigue. They do something awful, we get briefly upset, and then we normalize it.
So what you're telling me is that right now, today, as we're recording this, Facebook could be running experiments on millions of people?
Not could be, is. They run thousands of A/B tests every single day. Most are small, button colors, font sizes, notification timing. But some, we have no idea. There's no oversight, there's no ethics board, there's just Facebook deciding what version of reality to show you and measuring how you react.
That's terrifying.
And we haven't even gotten to the part where they influenced an election.
Okay, I need you to be very specific here. When you say Facebook influenced an election, what exactly do you mean?
November 2nd, 2010. Election day in America. Congressional midterms. Facebook decided to run an experiment on 61 million users.
61 million? As in 61 with 6 zeros?
Every single American over 18 who logged into Facebook that day was enrolled in the experiment without their knowledge. They were split into 3 groups. The first group, about 60 million people, 98% of the sample, saw what Facebook called a social message at the top of their newsfeed. It said, "Today is election day," showed them a link to find polling places, had an I voted button they could click, and, this is crucial, showed profile pictures of up to 6 of their Facebook friends who had already clicked the button.
Okay, that doesn't sound that sinister. Encouraging people to vote is good, right?
Wait for it. The second group, about 600,000 people, saw an almost identical message, but without the friend photos, just the information. The third group saw nothing at all, no voting reminder. Facebook then compared the behavior of all 3 groups.
Let me guess, the friend photos made a difference?
A massive difference. People who saw the version with friend photos were more likely to click I voted, more likely to look up polling places, and, here's where it gets real, more likely to actually vote. The informational message without friend photos? It performed exactly the same as showing nothing at all.
So information alone doesn't work, but social proof does?
Exactly. But here's the number that matters. Facebook's researchers estimated that their social message directly caused about 60,000 additional votes. But through social contagion, friends influencing friends, they triggered an additional 280,000 votes. Total, 340,000 extra people showed up at the polls because of a single Facebook message.
340,000 votes from one message on one day?
And remember, this was a midterm election. Turnout was only 37% of eligible voters. These numbers matter. The researchers pointed out that in the 2000 presidential election, Bush beat Al Gore in Florida by 537 votes. 537 votes decided the presidency. Facebook proved they could mobilize 340,000 votes with a single notification.
So Facebook could literally decide elections?
They could, and they knew it. The paper was published in Nature, one of the most prestigious scientific journals in the world. The researchers wrote, quote, "The effect of social transmission on real-world voting was greater than the direct effect of the messages themselves. They discovered that online actions can change offline behavior at a massive scale."
But this experiment was nonpartisan, right? They weren't trying to help one side.
That's what they claimed. The I voted button was shown to everyone equally. But here's the problem. Facebook decides who sees what. They control the algorithm. In this experiment, they showed the social message to 98% of users. But what if they showed it to 100% of users who lean Democratic and 0% of users who lean Republican, or vice versa?
They would never do that, right?
We have no way of knowing. There's no audit, there's no transparency. Facebook knows your political affiliation with frightening accuracy. They can infer it from your likes, your friends, your browsing history. They have the technical capability to show different messages to different political groups. And after 2010, they had scientific proof that those messages could swing elections.
Did anybody in government notice this?
The paper was discussed in academic circles, but most politicians didn't understand the implications. Remember, this was 2010, 2012. Social media was still seen as a fun distraction, not a geopolitical weapon. But researchers were sounding alarms. One political scientist noted that if Facebook had only shown the voting message to users who matched a certain demographic or political profile, it would have been possible to change the outcome of elections.
That's not a bug, that's a feature.
Here's what makes this worse. The researchers verified who actually voted by cross-referencing Facebook accounts with public voting records. They matched 6.3 million users with their real-world voter registration files. Facebook knows who you are. They know where you live. They know if you voted.
They literally tracked whether their manipulation worked by checking government records?
Yes, and they published a paper about it in Nature, and we all just went about our day. But this experiment planted a seed. It proved that social media could influence elections, and a few years later, someone else would take that lesson and run with it.
Cambridge Analytica.
We're getting there. But first, let me tell you about something called the voter megaphone. After 2010, Facebook made the I voted button a regular feature for every election. They show it to everyone now. Sounds innocent, right? But they've never revealed the data about how they target it, when they show it, or whether all users see it equally. They learned they have a superpower, and they've been using it in every election since with zero oversight.
So every election since 2010 has potentially been influenced by Facebook's algorithms.
Every election where Facebook operated, which is basically every democracy on Earth. And they've expanded their tools. They can suppress content, they can amplify content, they can send notifications to specific demographics. They have more influence over election outcomes than any foreign government could ever dream of. And they're not subject to any campaign finance laws.
Why aren't we talking about this more?
Because Facebook learned from the emotional contagion experiment. That one they bragged about. The voting experiment, they initially presented as a public service. Look, we help democracy. But behind closed doors, they understood exactly what they built. And 4 years later, someone else would use these tools for something far more sinister.
Okay, Cambridge Analytica. I remember hearing about this, but I never fully understood what happened.
Let me paint you a picture. It's 2013. A psychology researcher at Cambridge University named Alexander Kogan creates a Facebook app called This Is Your Digital Life. It's a personality quiz. You answer some questions, it tells you what type of person you are. Pretty standard stuff. About 270,000 people download the app and take the quiz.
270,000 doesn't sound like that many for Facebook.
It's not. But here's the trick. When you downloaded Kogan's app and gave it permission to access your Facebook data, you weren't just giving away your own information. Facebook's policies at the time allowed apps to collect data on all of your friends, too, without their consent. So 270,000 downloads turned into data on 87 million users.
From 270,000 to 87 million? That's not even the same order of magnitude.
Each person who took the quiz gave away data on an average of 300 of their friends. Names, locations, likes, political views, religious beliefs, relationship statuses, everything on their profiles, harvested without their knowledge or permission.
And what did Kogan do with this data?
He sold it to Cambridge Analytica, a political consulting firm funded by Robert Mercer, a prominent Republican donor, and advised by Steve Bannon, who would later become Trump's chief strategist.
I see where this is going.
Cambridge Analytica's whole business model was what they called psychographic targeting. They claimed they could analyze your Facebook data and build a psychological profile of you, your fears, your desires, your vulnerabilities. Then they could create personalized political ads designed to manipulate you specifically.
How is that different from normal advertising?
Normal advertising targets demographics. Cambridge Analytica claimed to target psychology. They said they could identify anxious people and show them ads that made them more anxious. They could find people susceptible to conspiracy theories and feed them misinformation. They weren't selling products, they were selling behavior change.
Did it actually work?
That's debated. Some researchers say Cambridge Analytica oversold their capabilities. But what's not debated is that they had the data. 87 million Facebook profiles. They worked on Ted Cruz's presidential campaign in 2015. When Cruz dropped out, they pivoted to Donald Trump's campaign, and in November 2016, Trump won.
So Facebook data may have helped elect a president?
The company, Cambridge Analytica, took credit for it. They literally bragged about running Trump's entire digital campaign. Now, whether their psychographic targeting actually worked is still argued by academics, but here's what's undeniable. Facebook's lax privacy policies allowed this data harvest to happen. Facebook knew about it in 2015, 2 years before the 2016 election, and their response was to quietly ask Cambridge Analytica to delete the data.
They asked nicely?
They didn't verify, they didn't audit, they didn't tell users. They just took Cambridge Analytica's word that the data was gone. Spoiler, it wasn't.
How did we find out about all this?
Christopher Wiley. He was a former Cambridge Analytica employee who became a whistleblower in 2018. He went to The Guardian and The New York Times with documents, recordings, everything. He described the company as a full-service propaganda machine.
What happened after the story broke?
Pure chaos. Facebook stock dropped $37 billion in a single day. Mark Zuckerberg was hauled before Congress. The hashtag #DeleteFacebook trended worldwide. Cambridge Analytica declared bankruptcy within 2 months.
And Facebook?
Facebook paid a $5 billion fine to the FTC, the largest penalty ever levied against a tech company. Sounds massive, right? But Facebook made $70 billion in revenue that year. That fine was about 5 weeks of profit. It's like fining someone who makes $100,000 a year, about $3,500 for potentially helping undermine democracy.
So there were no real consequences?
Mark Zuckerberg kept his job. Facebook kept operating. The fundamental business model, harvesting user data for profit, stayed exactly the same. And here's the kicker. In December 2022, Meta agreed to pay $725 million to settle a class action lawsuit related to the Cambridge Analytica scandal. That works out to roughly $30 per affected user. $30 for your psychological profile being used in a presidential election without your knowledge.
I never got my $30.
Most people didn't. And while everyone was focused on Cambridge Analytica, Facebook was quietly running another experiment, one they desperately didn't want anyone to find out about.
What could be worse than election manipulation?
How about knowingly harming children and covering it up?
I'm listening.
In September 2021, a Facebook employee named Frances Haugen did something unprecedented. She gathered tens of thousands of pages of internal documents, research studies, Slack conversations, internal presentations, and leaked them to the Wall Street Journal and Congress.
Another whistleblower.
But Haugen was different. She wasn't some disgruntled, low-level employee. She was a product manager who had worked on civic integrity, literally trying to fix Facebook's problems from the inside. And what she revealed about Instagram was devastating.
What did she find?
Internal research conducted by Facebook itself showing that Instagram was toxic for teenage girls. One study found that 32% of teen girls said that when they felt bad about their bodies, Instagram made them feel worse. Another study found that 13.5% of teen girls said Instagram made thoughts of suicide worse. 17% said it contributed to their eating disorders.
And Facebook knew this?
They didn't just know it, they studied it. They ran focus groups, they did deep psychological research into exactly how their platform was harming children. One internal presentation was titled Teen Mental Health Deep Dive. Another had a slide that said Instagram was making body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teenage girls.
So what did they do about it?
Nothing. Actually, worse than nothing. While they were sitting on this research, they were developing a new product called Instagram Kids, a version of Instagram specifically designed for children under 13.
They found out their product hurts teenagers and decided to make a version for even younger kids.
The internal logic, according to leaked documents, was that kids were already lying about their age to get on Instagram, so Facebook figured they might as well make money off them legally. When the Haugen leaks exposed this, Facebook put Instagram Kids on pause. Not canceled, paused.
This is sociopathic behavior.
It gets worse. The documents showed that Facebook's own research found that teens attributed their increased anxiety and depression directly to Instagram. They understood that features like likes, comments, and algorithmic feeds were designed to exploit adolescent psychology. Instagram's algorithm would literally recommend eating disorder content to teenage girls who showed signs of body image issues.
Wait, the algorithm actively pushed harmful content to vulnerable users?
Haugen described how Facebook tested this themselves. They created accounts posing as 13-year-old girls and followed some diet and fitness content. Within days, the algorithm was recommending pro-anorexia content. Facebook knew this was happening and didn't stop it.
How is this not criminal?
Technically, no law explicitly prohibits this. Facebook isn't selling cigarettes to minors. They're selling attention, your children's attention, to advertisers. And the more damaged and insecure those children are, the more they scroll, the more ads they see, the more money Facebook makes.
What did Facebook say in response to all this?
Their official response was that the research was cherry-picked and that the documents didn't tell the full story. They pointed to other data showing that most teens said Facebook and Instagram had positive effects on their mental health.
Most isn't all.
Exactly. Even if 70% of users are fine, that still means 30% are being harmed. And when your platform has over 1 billion users, 30% is hundreds of millions of people. But here's what really broke me. The documents show that Facebook executives knew about these problems for years. They chose not to fix them because fixing them would reduce engagement. Less engagement means less ad revenue. They literally did the math on children's well-being versus profit, and profit won.
How is Frances Haugen now? Did she face consequences?
She testified before Congress. She became a global advocate for social media regulation. She's been called the most important tech whistleblower since Edward Snowden. But has anything fundamentally changed at Meta? Not really. They restricted some features for teen accounts. They added some parental controls, but the core business model, the algorithm that maximizes engagement regardless of harm, that's still running.
What happened with the lawsuits?
As of now, over 1,800 families have filed lawsuits against Meta, claiming Instagram caused their children to develop depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and in some cases, to attempt suicide. These cases have been consolidated into a massive federal lawsuit. Meta has tried to get the cases dismissed, arguing they're protected under Section 230, the law that shields tech companies from liability for user-generated content. But courts have ruled that these lawsuits are different. They're targeting Meta's own design choices, not content created by users.
So the algorithm itself is on trial?
Essentially, yes. The question that courts are asking is, when you design a product that you know is harming children, and you keep running it anyway because it makes money, are you responsible for that harm? We might finally get an answer.
We've covered experiments on emotions, experiments on voting, data theft for political manipulation, and knowingly harming children. Is there more?
There's one thread that connects everything. Addiction by design.
What do you mean?
Every feature we've talked about, the emotional manipulation, the voting buttons, the recommendation algorithms, they all serve one purpose: keeping you on the platform as long as possible. Facebook and Instagram aren't designed to make you happy. They're designed to make you engaged. And sometimes the most engaging content is the most harmful.
Engaged how?
Your brain has a chemical called dopamine. It's the reward chemical. It makes you feel good when you accomplish something, when you're excited, when you anticipate a reward. Facebook's engineers, many of whom studied under a Stanford professor named B.J. Fogg, who literally wrote the book on persuasive technology, designed features specifically to hijack your dopamine system.
Give me an example.
The like button. When you post something, you don't know how many likes you'll get. Maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe none. That uncertainty triggers dopamine, not the likes themselves, but the anticipation. It's the same psychological mechanism that makes slot machines addictive. You pull the lever, you don't know what you'll get, and that uncertainty keeps you coming back.
So, Facebook is a slot machine?
Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, said exactly that. In 2017, he admitted that Facebook was designed to exploit a vulnerability in human psychology. He said the question driving development was, how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible? Chamath Palihapitiya, Facebook's former VP of user growth, was even more blunt. He said they created short-term, dopamine-driven feedback loops that are destroying how society works.
These are Facebook executives saying this.
Former executives, yes. The people who built the machine are now warning us about what they built. Infinite scroll, the feature where you can just keep scrolling forever with no natural endpoint, that's not an accident. It's designed to eliminate the cue that would tell your brain, I'm done. Notification badges, the red dots that create anxiety until you click them, engineered to create compulsive checking. The algorithm that shows you content that makes you angry, anger keeps you engaged longer than happiness.
So everything is designed to manipulate us?
Everything is designed to maximize engagement, and the research shows that engagement correlates with emotional intensity. The more emotional the content, the more you engage. The more you engage, the more ads you see. The more ads you see, the more money Meta makes. Your mental health is a cost they've decided to externalize.
What can we actually do about this?
That's the trillion-dollar question. Some people say delete your accounts. Some say we need government regulations. Some say we need to redesign these platforms from the ground up with human well-being as the priority instead of engagement. But whatever the solution is, it starts with awareness. It starts with understanding that when you use Facebook or Instagram, you're not the customer, you're the product. And sometimes you're the lab rat.
So let me see if I can summarize this. Over the past decade plus, Meta has manipulated the emotions of nearly 700,000 people without their consent, proven they can influence elections by 340,000 votes with a single message, enabled the harvesting of 87 million users' data for political manipulation, buried internal research showing Instagram harms teenagers, and designed their platforms to be psychologically addictive.
And those are just the experiments we know about.
How do they keep getting away with this?
Because the legal framework that governs them was built for a different era, because politicians don't understand the technology well enough to regulate it, because we, the users, keep coming back. We know cigarettes cause cancer, but people still smoke. We know Facebook manipulates us, but we still scroll.
So what's the answer?
There isn't a simple one. Some countries are trying regulation. The EU has new laws requiring transparency about algorithms. Some states in the US are suing Meta directly. Some advocacy groups are calling for breaking up the company. But realistically, change will only come when enough people decide that convenience isn't worth the cost.
What would you tell someone who's listened to this entire podcast?
3 things.
First, audit your relationship with social media. How much time are you actually spending? How do you feel after scrolling? Is it adding to your life or draining it? Second, if you have kids, pay attention. The internal research is clear. These platforms can be harmful for young people. Talk to your children about what they're seeing online. Third, vote for politicians who understand this issue and are willing to do something about it. The only language Meta speaks is money and power. We need to change the incentives.
On that note, like, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it.